Hey everyone, ArtDude47 here, and I'm back for another devlog. Today is one of those special days in programming where I get to hate on my past self for taking the lazy route, because now I'm going to have to fix some things to add what I wanted to add today. What I want to work on is a shop system, so that way when you talk to an NPC that owns a shop, you can open it up, purchase any of their goods, but there's a bit of a problem with the way I've got everything set up that's going to cause some extra work, so I'm going to have to go ahead and fix that. I did kind of prepare for this when I coded, and so I'm going to show you how I worked this out. Basically, I'm using a lot of scriptable objects in my game. So if you look here under my inventories, I've got the test player inventory, and you see it just holds items. So what I can do is I can just come here, hit create, and then I can go to the inventory system and I can create a new inventory. We'll call this test shop, and we'll put some items in there. We'll say they sell the test seed as well as the test seed number 2. And if we go into the test seed, you can see this is the equipable item. It goes in the equipment slot. It's called test seed. It's ID number 2. It is tradable. Buy value is 100, sell value is 50. So the shop will automatically know, hey, I need to sell this for 100 when I pull up the shop. That is all well and good. The issue comes with my event system. So everything is using a scriptable object event system. It triggers an event when you do certain actions, and then things respond to that event. So if you see here, I've got different types of events. So if I go to day night, there's a new day event, new hour, new season, new week. These all get triggered, and then any listeners that are listening for these will react when they're triggered. So I'll show you the code here real quick. I've got a game event, which is a scriptable object. It's got a list of listeners. Anybody who needs to react to this game event will be included in this list. And then it's got the raise event, which just cycles through the list of listeners backwards, by the way. That way, if any listener is removed during the raise event, it doesn't crash. And it calls their raised function. Alright, and then I've got a second function here, which I've added. This is for today, the work I've already started. This is going to take a parameter. So if you just pretend this is not here for now, because this is part of the problem that I'm having. Alright, so then you've just got register listener. Would help if I commented in the correct spot. Which just adds listener to the list, and then remove listener removes it from the list. Then you have the actual listener, which takes a game event, and then it has a Unity event as its response. This is also new code from what I've been working on adding to fix the problem I've created, so we'll ignore that for a moment. But basically on enable, so anytime it is added to something in the Unity inspector, it registers the listener to the game event. On disable, it removes it, and then it invokes the response, which is this Unity event whenever it's raised. This again is part of the new stuff I'm adding. So from what you could see from what I'm adding and from the current event system, basically the problem is it currently doesn't accept arguments. So if you need to pass a variable with an event, it will not accept that variable. And so the problem is coming when I'm in my dialog system and I say open shop. I need to know which shop to open, but the event cannot pass an inventory. So I've already started work to fix that. But as I'm doing that, it's also causing me to need to fix some other things that I did wrong and lazily at the beginning, namely with the dialogue system. I considered writing a new event that could take an integer for which NPC you were talking to, and instead of doing that, I made a unique event for each NPC. Let me try to find that here for you now. So start dialog NPC 1, start dialog NPC 2. And so then I would have to create a new event for every NPC that gets added to the game, plus go into the dialog system and create a reaction for each one. whereas really it should just be one event that passes an integer that references which NPC you're talking to, and then there's only one method required in the Dialog Manager. So that's what I'm going to get to work on. I'm going to go ahead and fix that now. I'll check in with updates with you, and I'll let you know how the progress goes and show you once we can get that shop system up and running and some of these issues worked out. Alright, I'm checking back in after a bit of a struggle. I have finally gotten the event system worked out, I believe. So if you take a look at the code here, I'm just going to get rid of these. I was using those for some errors I was running into. What I've got now, if you look into the event listener, I've got a few different types of response now. So it can be a response that takes an inventory or a response that takes an integer. And then I've just got some overrides for the onEvent raised. If it takes an inventory is put into the call, then it'll run this one and pass the inventory, integer, that one. What I did is I just modified game event. Literally all you have to do is add this int, and now it's a Unity event that takes integer. So I did one for integer and inventory, which helped with my interactable script. What I did was I just changed interaction. It'll raise the regular interaction, and then if the interactable object is an NPC, it will also raise the integer interaction, and it'll pass the NPC's ID. So that way, once we get into Dialog Manager, you can see the way I used to be doing it was I had a public void talk to NPC 1, and then I had a talk to NPC 2. Well, we can get rid of those now, because now it will just be talk to NPC, and it'll take an int for the NPC ID. We'll cycle through all the NPCs, find the one that matches the ID, and then we'll pull their dialogue based on that. So when I show you the script in action, it won't look much different from what you've already seen, but behind the scenes it's a big deal because now I can quickly and easily add more NPCs, and it will help when I'm doing the shop system. And so you could see here in the console, talk to NPC 0, that's the ID, and if we come over here, you could see that it gets the correct ID and talks to NPC 1. Alright, so then we will finally get rid of all this extra code because I shouldn't need it anymore. And I'll just save the script and we'll try running it once again just to make sure that's all working. Yep. So now you can see that it's still talking to the NPCs. So that took me a bit longer than I expected. Next up is the shop system. Now that I've got that down, it should be easier to start it. So I'll get back to work and I'll update you all as I get some progress on that shopping system. Alright guys, I'm back for another quick update here. I've been working hard on the shop system, and so I've got a little bit of progress to show you before I call it a night tonight. So let's go ahead and hit play. And first thing you can see, I've added a third NPC. If I pull up some of the information here, I can just show you how I've handled that. So I've got shop NPC as a scriptable object now. Got his name shop guy, he's ID number 2. He's met the player because I've been testing, so he's talked to him. And then he's only got one conversation right now, as you can see, and it's open shop, which is also a scriptable object. And if we go into that, you can see conversation starts with this line of dialogue, which says, "Would you like to see my shop?" It has two responses. There's a response yes, which you can see here, just says yes, and then it has the bool checked off that it opens a shop. And so if you hit yes, then it'll open up the shop. And on the alternative, if you hit no, you could see that open shop is not checked off, and it'll just say something like, okay, come back anytime. So let's go ahead and try this out with the actual NPC. As you see, when I talk to him, would you like to open my shop? No. Okay, come back anytime. Would you like to see my shop? Yes. It opens up a similar inventory screen, and as you can see, I've decided to make the tooltip a little transparent. I'm also going to make it sized dynamically. I just haven't gotten around to it. But you can see he sells test seed 1 for 100, test seed 2 for 500. And if we just look again in the inspector real quick with the NPCs, you can see shop NPC. Down here he's got a shop which is test inventory, which is also a scriptable object. And so if you take a look here, test inventory does in fact have test seed and test seed 2. And this is just nice because it's easily it's dynamic, you know, you can change it at any time. So like I can just click add an item here and we'll make it test fruit 2. And now if we talk to him and open his shop, it'll just have test fruit 2, which is a potato, that's the name, and it's worth 50. And then obviously if you close shop, thank you, stop by anytime. And so that's basically what I've got down for now. There's a few bugs I have to work out, like as you see, if you're in the shop, if you click close shop, then it comes up with this empty dialog. But if you hit enter on the shop, then it just says thank you, stop by anytime. So we'll get that worked out. There's also currently a glitch because of the way I've handled items where you can show items to an NPC. For instance, if I bring the test seed over to this guy and try to offer it to him, he says I hate this and he takes it. That counts as a gift for the day. So the shop guy, if you talk to him with an item, you can see that he's pulling up the wrong dialogues and it just kind of glitches out because he doesn't have reactions to items. He's just supposed to open a shop. So I'm going to need to make a workaround for that as well. Those are the two bugs that have cropped up that I've seen since I started working on this. So we'll get those taken care of, and I'm going to start back again tomorrow. So I'll check back in with you guys when I've got the next update. Alright guys, I'm back again with some more updates. It's the next morning and I've been back at work. Working hard on the game. There were a few bugs I was trying to get rid of. If you'll recall, there was an issue with the dialogue after exiting out of the shop that sometimes showed a blank dialogue. We've got that fixed. Made some other changes that needed to be changed. So if we get playing here, pull up the inventory, which I cleared for this demonstration, but the first thing you see is the clock is now stopped. So time will freeze while you're within your inventory, so that way, much like Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley, you're not using up valuable time sorting through your inventory. So then if we get out of the inventory, there's a few big deals here that I've finally updated. So when we open Shop Guy's shop, if I go over here and keep hitting enter, you'll notice before interactions worked through menus, so I would still be attempting to talk to him, creating errors, but now they won't work. The other thing is I can't pull up the inventory anymore while I'm in this menu, which I could beforehand. So then the other thing I've created down here, let me just pull it up. I've got some variable scriptable objects, and there is one for the player's money. It's currently set to 50. I'm just going to set it to 500. It's not being displayed on the screen anywhere here, but you can see the number over here in this inspector, 500. And so if we go over the potato, test seed, we'll take this first test seed here. You see the value is 100. If I hit enter, my money has gone down to 400 because that was the cost, and I've bought a seed here. Now if I close the shop with the mouse, you can see now, thank you, stop by anytime, pops up without any blank, and I've got the test seed in my inventory. Don't worry about the 9 there, that's still something that's got to be worked out because of the way I'm handling items right now. they're scriptable objects. So if I show you here in the inventory and then items, and we go down to test seed, basically there's a count, number of test seeds that you currently have. And I've just got it super high for testing purposes, but we could change it to 1 and then refresh the inventory. So you see the inventory will update properly. And so now if we go back and if we buy one, it properly updates to 2. I've just got it at this really high number for testing purposes, so that way I'm not having to keep adding them back into the inventory and things like that. So that's all that's happening there. I just found another bug here where it looks like I'm not checking to see if their inventory slot is null before I try to equip it. So I'll need to do that. That's just an easy null check. But yeah, so as you can see, basically it was just a lot of bug fixes. Now the time freezes while you're in inventories. While you're in the shop, the same thing happens. Time freezes, so that way you're not killing time while you're in the shop. And then it just resumes right back up when you end. And then interactions can't overlap each other. So the other one was while you were in the inventory. If you were, say, down here and hit enter, you would start talking to that NPC from the inventory. That has been resolved as well. Alright, so I'll get back to work and I'll let you guys know when I've got the next update. Now that I've got the shop system in pretty good shape, there's a few things I'd like to do. I'd like to add a quantity. So, you know, you purchase test seed 1, a little pop-up comes up and says, hey, how many of these do you want to buy? So it'd be like when you hit enter here. And then you can cycle through, it'll calculate how many you can afford, and it'll let you go up to that number. And then it'll give you a confirmation. So it'll be like, do you really want to buy 10 seeds for $1,000? So that's what I'm going to work on next, and I'll be back when I've got the next update. Alright, so I've been at work again, doing some more coding. I don't have much to show off. A lot of what I did was back-end stuff. I just went back and anywhere that I did cheaty hacky code where I was working around the event system, I believe I've gone back and fixed everything, so now they're using the event system with arguments passed through, so with variables passed through. But there are a few visible things that I got done that I want to show real quick. So we'll head into the game. First things first, if I pull up the inventory, you can see I've just added a quick money display. Obviously none of this is final, but there you could see the money for the inventory to help out a little bit. So now, if we go to the shop, open shop, you can see there's also a money display over here, just so that way you can see it working while you're using the shop. And then we can close out of the shop. The other thing I added, if we pull the test hoe out and till that, plant the test seed and water it. We'll just wait a day. I added a new item and a new interaction. So here I've got a test sickle. And actually you don't even have to wait for it to grow. If we use the test sickle, you can see that it's actually destroyed the plant there. And so that way you could put in a new plant. So that way if a plant dies or if you accidentally plant the wrong plant, you do have a way to destroy it and then replant. Or maybe the season's changed and that plant's no longer viable. You can go through and use the sickle to destroy them. Of course, the sickle later on will be used for harvesting grass to feed animals as well. So I added that interaction type. And the way I'm doing it is actually using the name of the item. So I could have an endless amount of sickles in the game as long as they have the word sickle in their name. The code just checks their name to see if it contains the word sickle, and so it'll act as a sickle. Same goes with watering cans and hose. So I can go in to the Scriptable Objects down here, inventory, and then items. And just so you can see here, we'll create one real quick. We'll just call it test hoe 2. And we'll item name golden hoe. These would be equipable, and they go in the equip slot. And we'll just make the ID 250. And let's see. I think I've used every sprite I've got available to me at this point. We'll just give it the test icon. We'll give it a description of golden hoe. And for testing purposes, we're going to give it a count of 9,000 or 99,999. All right. So then if I play, I'm actually going to need to pause it because I've realized I didn't add any way to get this new hoe into our inventory. So we'll just add it right here. Pull up the player inventory, and we'll add test hoe number 2. So now if we resume and pull up the inventory, we should have the golden hoe, a golden hoe, and if we equip that and use it, you can see it actually tills the soil down here. I've got interacted with a hoe just so I can make sure it's working properly. So you can easily add different items. Of course, eventually there will be an exhaustion system, and so different hoes will do a different amount, I was going to say of damage, but more like they'll use up a different amount of energy. So the starting hoe might be like a heavy hoe that takes a lot of energy to swing, and by the time you get to the golden hoe, it will use up less energy, so you can use more work, and it can also, we'll make it so it'll till more than one piece of soil at a time, either, you know, like in a straight line or maybe a grid. I'll figure that out as I start developing items for use more. But so far, that's what I've got to show off. Additionally, I'm going to keep on cracking at it. I've actually got to come up with what I'm going to work on next, because that's got the shop system about done, at least for now. It's got it in a workable, in a workable form. So I'm going to move on from the shop system. I just have to decide what system or what thing we're going to work on next. And once I've decided that, I'll come back and update. Alright, I'm back for what I think is going to be the last update of this video. I think this will get the shop system knocked out, and so we'll end it there. And then once I've decided what to work on next, that'll start the next devlog. I know in the last segment I said I was done with the shop system, but I remembered something pretty important that needed to be done, which was you got an error anytime you talk to the shop NPC while you were holding an item, because basically he didn't have any dialogues for if you were holding an item. He only had a shop dialogue. So I'm going to show you my NPC, how it's laid out, why that was happening, and I think I've already decided what I'm working on next, at least a little bit, because looking at this NPC scriptable object over here in the side, you can see it's getting pretty convoluted. So I think I'm going to take some time and organize these. But basically they've got a name, they've got an ID, they've got whether or not they've met the player, and then now I've added this bool whether or not they own a shop. So if it's checked, the dialogue system knows, hey, don't worry about any of their item preferences or anything like that. He's just going to open a shop. And so I've added this shop convo right here so that it knows which conversation opens his shop up. But there's the first met convo, so that's how that works. If he hasn't met it, it just plays this conversation. If you show him a loved item, it would play that conversation. A liked item, it would play that conversation. Neutral item, it'll play that conversation, and so on. I added a neutral conversation to him because this new update allows for that to work. And then you see right here, conversations. This is used at runtime to determine which conversations out of all conversations can be spoken. So for instance, if they've got season limitations or time limitations or affection limitations, they'll get added in real time to that list, and then the dialogue system will choose from this list. all conversations or just all of this NPC's possible conversations. And then I've got a list of loved items. Obviously, currently he's got none. Then there's like, dislike, hated. The way it works is any item that is not within one of these lists must be a neutral item. That way you don't have to add every single item to every single NPC. You only have to add the ones that they feel a certain way about. Otherwise, it is neutral. Then the current affection is how the NPC currently feels about you. Max affection is the most it can be. If you've talked today, that gives a little affection boost, so that's why there's a bool there. The first time you talk per day, you'll get an affection boost. And then there's the gift for today. And then there's the gift per week with the max gifts per week, so that he can take 2 gifts per week now. Currently hasn't gotten any. Finally, there's his inventory. And then there's these 2 new variables, the open time of the shop and the close time of the shop. That way, he can still talk to you as a normal NPC outside of shop hours. And so we'll take a look at that now. That item is pretty meh, but I will still take it. So you can see now I don't have any item equipped. He took it as a gift. And if I talk to him now, my shop isn't open right now. Now we'll just wait a little bit because I believe I've got his shop opening at 1 p.m. just so that way I could test it out and make sure I had plenty of time in the day. So if we talk to him now, it might be 2. Well, I may have a bug here. Let's just try a few more times. Yep, looks like I've got a bug. So let's just take a look real quick at the code. So for the Dialog Manager, basically, it chooses the NPC, it checks if they have a shop, then it checks if the time hour is greater than the shop open time, and it's also less than the shop close time. So let me just make sure I've got that set up correctly here. It's in the variables. Let's just see here, make sure that the hour let's make the day go super quick. We'll make it 0.25 just so it's still, so we can still see. And now let's make sure the hour doesn't, can't remember if I have it a 12 hour or 24 hour. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. So it is on 24 hour. So let's just see. If NPC has shop and the time hour is greater than the open time. Because if he opens at 13, then 14 should be open. And time hour is less than the close time. And let's just take a look at shop NPC. Open time is 13, close time is 22. Has shop is true. Oh, I know what I did. This has to be an else. Otherwise, it'll just go through and choose his normal conversation. So let's just go back there so I can just show you real quick what I did here. So it checks if he has a shop, then it changes the current line to the shop as long as the shop should be open. Then it checks if he's met the player. If not, it plays the first line. Changes it to has met. And then else, if he hadn't met the player, then it just chooses his regular conversation. But I didn't have met player as an else if, so after it went here and determined yes, open the shop, it went here and chose different conversation. So now that should help with opening the shop. So if we talk to him now, shop's not open, but if we wait until now, would you like to shop? So now that works almost as intended. I meant for his shop to open at 1, but since I'm using greater than, I would need to put the open time at 12. So now let's just change this to 0.45 just to give us a little more time. Shop's not open, 5, 6. Now right at 1, it should be open. So yeah, now we can use his shop only during the open times, and when I come to actually making the game rather than just this little test world, that'll help a lot, because if their shop's closed, you may find them, for instance, at the bar after work or somewhere around town, and that way they can still be treated like a regular NPC outside of shopping hours, meaning you can still befriend them, you can still give them gifts, things like that. And so this system will help make that a reality. So that's basically what I added. Now that really does take care of the shopping system for now. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and end this episode. Like I said, I'll be back with the next one. If you have any questions or critiques, please don't hesitate to leave a comment, like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.